programs. I don't want to go into all the heebie-jeebie stuff. I like accommodation. It's something specific that gives people value in the community.
Yep.
It works.
Hello everyone, thank you for your patience and your understanding. Have we all enjoyed the day so far?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Alright. Let me introduce myself. My name's Nina Crumpton and I am the founder and the CEO of the Hand Up Space, and I'm also a support coordinator. Firstly, I'd like to do an acknowledgement of country and pay my respects to the original inhabitants of the Liverpool area that we're meeting on today, being the Darug and the Tharawal people, and it always was and always will be Indigenous land. This is me. It's all very shiny, very happy, isn't it? Very, very positive, very glowing. In the top picture there, I've just done a presentation about SIL Housing. In the bottom right, I'm doing a photo shoot for my website. And over in the left corner, that was a sharing SIL presentation that I did. So that's part of me. Oh, more shiny, glossy pictures. Now, you know how they say Instagram is always the highlights of your life? This is the highlights. So, picture on the right is me and Fawn Barraclough, and I was her +1 at the Illawarra Women in Business Awards lunch. And on the left, I am also at an event there with supporting the Right Way Disability, who are a new provider in Wollongong. So it's all very glossy, isn't it? Very business-like. That's me. That's still me. It's proud, disabled me. So July is Disability Pride Month, and whilst things have definitely improved in our society, I still feel that in many ways people with disability are segregated and an afterthought in society, and I think we still have a long way to go. I like the fact that unlike the LGBTIQ community, the Disability Pride Month has not yet been monetised, and performative allyship is not yet quite a thing in the corporate world, but give it some time and it might be. So please remember Disability Pride Month and think about what you can do in that month to support people with disability in an authentic way. So I live with MS and bipolar 1, and I'm also an NDIS participant, shock, horror. And I'm saying there in that slide that life wasn't always as good as it is today, and I guess that's kind of a surprise, because you'd think if I had those sorts of disabilities, well, I wouldn't think that way, right? Does anyone know what MS is? I would hope so, in a room like this. Can anyone put their hand up and be brave enough? Anyone? Yep.
It's a neurological condition.
It is. It's a chronic neurodegenerative disease of the central nervous system. And does anyone know what bipolar is? Bipolar 1 in specifics. Be brave, please. Oh, yes.
Manic depression?
Yes, that is the old name for it, yes. With bipolar 1, the person cycles between elevated cycles and depression, and must have had at least one manic episode to be diagnosed with bipolar 1. Symptoms, particularly during the manic phase, is increased energy, hyperactivity, and decreased need for sleep, an inflated self-image, substance use, hypersexuality, grandiose, unrealistic plans. Maybe that was when I tried to start the business, maybe. And if not treated, managed well, it can also have episodes of psychosis. I'm telling you this because I'm open about having a disability, because I want to break down the stigma and show you that even with these types of disabilities, you still can have a life worth living. So that's me, 5 years old there. I grew up in a housing commission home in Malindi, suburb of Malindi, northern suburbs of Wollongong, with my mother, who was a single parent, and it was beachfront. If anyone knows Malindi, it's beachfront, like prime real estate. And we had a huge sweeping willow tree in the backyard, and I always remember lying under that willow tree and looking up at those flowers. And even to this day, whenever I go to like a flower market, I always buy yellow willows. And I really wanted a dog, but as a sole parent on a pension, my mother, just didn't have the money for that sort of luxuries. But these days I have two, so go me. Malindi's always been the place that's looked down upon. There is a stigma associated with being part of the community. And when I was in school, you would have teachers quite actively tell you that you're never going to be anything coming from Malindi. I mean, you've got to admit that this is 20, 30 years ago, so things are different these days, I would hope, but it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that when you don't have somebody to believe in you, you often don't believe in yourself. So my father and my brother were completely absent from my life, and my mother, Iris, was all I had. So, when they talk about NDIS and lack of informal supports, well, sit there and picture who you sit with at your Christmas table, and then imagine my Christmas table. Well, that's lack of informal supports. My mother, Iris, grew up in a home filled with alcoholism, domestic violence, poverty and mental illness, and that trauma shaped her into who she became. She was a sole parent. She did the best she could, but with no family support or services, she was set up for failure. And I think, I wish the NDIS had been in place then. Maybe it might just have made a difference in the outcome that her life took. Her mood swings were unpredictable and savage. She would swing from episodes of elation to paranoia and depression, where there was no immediate triggers or rhyme or reason. Not rational. But then again, that's what a psychosocial disability is. I recall coming home from school and I would find my pictures, like school pictures, chopped up, destroyed, burnt. And the furniture in the house, she would have taken it all, chopped it up, threw it out the front, and then all we had left was a tea chest and little crates to sit at. And the cycle would repeat. So when the mood changed, she would go back out to the salvos and rebuy the furniture. I lived in fear of entering the foster care system, so I learned how to mask, and I did it really well. And I'm telling you all this, not for you to feel sorry for me, but the reason will become apparent as we go along. So, my mother was also a sex worker. She would leave money in an ice cream container. It was always blue ribbon ice cream. I always remember the blue tub. She'd leave the money in the ice cream container for me to buy food while she would go off and work. So I was a latchkey kid. By the age of 12, my mother inherited a home from her grandmother, from my grandmother, and we suddenly moved to what was an affluent, white, middle-class suburb, and it was like another planet. Wow, it was like another planet. Everyone had two functional parents. They both had jobs, they had cars, they had holidays. I've never been on a holiday. It was like a different world. But living there caused her mental health to deteriorate even further. I was bullied at school, in high school, because we didn't own a car, and I couldn't shower every day, well, more than like once or twice a week, because my mother was absolutely convinced that there was spirits living in the hot water system, you could say, and I would have to raid bins at night for clothes and food. So around the age of 15, it became unsafe to live at home any longer, and I chose myself over her. So I packed my stuff into those stripy shopping bags, you know, the big ones that you can get from Jolly World? The Go Low, that's it. They went out of business, didn't they? COVID killed them off. And I moved into Hotel Illawarra. So does anyone know Hotel Illawarra in Wollongong? Yeah. So it's a pub on the corner of one of the main streets in Wollongong, and they've got rooms upstairs where you can move into. It's just a room, one bed, cupboard, little sink, kitchen, everything's downstairs. That was my home for the next 5 years. And my neighbours were, and I say this with all respect, but they were the underclass of society. They were sex workers, addicts, parolees. It taught me so much, Wouldn't be, I don't think I'd be who I am if I hadn't had that experience. Hated it at the time, but in respect. I met one of my neighbours, was a young guy by the name of Savory. Won't use the last name, confidentiality. And he was a gay male sex worker, and we just clicked, and he taught me how to be streetwise. And the funny thing is, it was only recently, like while I was out doing a home visit, I was at a homeless shelter in Wollongong. He came out, and this is 20-something years later, he recognised me, and he's like, "Oh my God, it's you." He's like, "We have to catch up." And I'm like, how are you? He was still in the cycle of homelessness. Yeah. So, it's very difficult to break the cycle of generational poverty and dysfunction, and without family support or role models, it's near impossible, in my personal opinion. So, until my mother passed in 2018, I was her carer for 28 years of my life. That's a long time. Like I was a child carer, and then I became an adult carer. But what I learnt was systems and navigation of bureaucracy. I don't think there has been a bureaucracy that I haven't come into contact with for housing, Centrelink, kit and caboodle. Makes you a really great support coordinator when you've been doing it for such a long time. So by 2013, I played the snakes and ladders game of life. I was moving up in the world, man. I was at UOW. I was wearing that UOW shirt, strutting around University of Wollongong campus like I owned that shit, you know. Oh my God, I had left all that behind, right? Yeah. Maybe not. So I started having issues with extreme fatigue. I was having falls. The memory issues were so bad that my GP wanted to refer me to a geriatrician. It was getting harder and harder to pass the assessments, and I was coming in at passing at a HD level to a D, to then just skimming to a P, and they say, "Oh, it passes, passes is fine." No. So I woke up one day and I had slurred speech, pretty much paralysed from the neck down, and ended up in hospital and diagnosed with MS. I was 32 years old, and it taught me that we have very little control over anything in life, and we have to be okay with that. So I chose to accept, adapt and overcome. That was on the wall of my neurologist's office. So I kind of really took that on as a mantra. Later on, in 2020, I was diagnosed with bipolar 1, and then in 2022, with foreign accent syndrome. So I had a MS exacerbation, and then that's appeared to clear, and I woke up one day speaking in a Russian accent. Kid you not. It's a very rare symptom of MS. It's when you have swelling in the Broca, centre of the brain, the brainstem. So for 6 to 8 weeks I was speaking in a Russian/Mediterranean accent, and I couldn't shake it, and I really thought this is the end of like my working life. I'm like, nah. But then I thought, well, no, I think I'll start my own business. So I learned pretty quickly that there was also very little support pre-NDIS, very little. People say, oh, NDIS is bad, I get it, right? But before NDIS, I was in that system, there was nothing. I had 4 hours a week of support. What would I do with 4 hours? 4 hours. I was angry because, yeah, I was sliding down that snakes and ladders of life, but I knew I had to adapt. My childhood had taught me, well, you know, nothing's guaranteed. You've got to be very able to move and manipulate and problem solve and change at the drop of a hat. And that's where the seeds of resilience are sown. I think that's where they are when you are young. So I joined the SCIA peer group, and I started to learn what it is to live well with a disability. And then I thought, those guys taught me everything. Those old blokes, they don't really know how to do it. And then I thought, well, hang on, this is working, so I'll start an MS peer support group. And I started working with the MS Society. Got an accessible home with Housing New South Wales down in Wollongong. I applied, I got in as a priority, and I was housed within 6 weeks. Returned to TAFE to study community services, and that's where I met a mentor who would play a really important part in my life. So this was my MS era. I met a lady called Susan Tane, and she was community engagement manager, I believe, at the time. She's no longer with us, unfortunately, at MS, and she took me on, and she said, look, I see something in you, some potential. I was like, really? I know, but anyway, I've ripped myself off at this stage. And she said, look, you're gonna come back, and we're gonna work you into the NDIS space, and you're gonna be fabulous. So I stayed with MS for 6 years in their sport coordination division, and I loved it because NDIS, the revolution was coming, right? And I attended every political rally there was. I went to Sydney, I went to Melbourne, and I thought, this NDIS, this is how I'm going to rebuild my life. I was like convinced this is how. But I also thought there was going to be a lot of innovative providers, and the system was going to change. I was so excited. Not so much anymore, but hey, you know. But for me, it's been life-changing, and I want to show you how and why. And at the end, I'll throw the floor open to questions. You can ask anything you want. Don't hold back. If you don't feel comfortable asking me, well, we can talk later. So, I decided to treat myself like a small business. I looked at the size of my plan, and I thought, well, that's actually what a small business kind of thing might have as a turnover. So I am a business, right? Set myself up for a 5-year plan. Now, year one. Year one, I thought I'm going to focus on assistive technology. So my main goal that year was to get all of the assistive technology funded and in place so that I could work and access the community in a safe way. So I went at it hammer and time. I got my permanent wheelchair, I got my, I was linked in with MS ESS and got all of the, through job access, I got things for the workplace and whatnot. So year one was all about AT, because without AT, well, foundations, isn't it? Year two. Year two, my plan was to build a vibrant ecosystem of support. Funded, support, NDIS, community and mainstream. So, if we look at all the pictures here, these are just examples of things that I've done. This is, down here is Dykes on Bikes. I go out motorbike riding with them. Up there is Bus Stop Films. I was in the Bus Stop Films program for a number of years, love it. Down here, one of the multicultural, I was a volunteer helping refugees to read, so on and so forth. So I built that whole system, support workers, community, mainstream, surrounding myself with it. One of the challenges that I found is finding and retaining skilled support workers, and I'm sure you're all going to nod and say, yep. How can you achieve the goals that you set in your plan when you cannot retain or find the workers? It's very hard, very, very hard. That's been my single biggest challenge. Year 3. Year 3 was vehicle modifications, so I used KM Kite, lovely man, Blair Kite, and my vehicle modifications process was relatively easy, bearing in mind that I certainly know that I have a level of privilege that others do not. I purchased the Kia Carnival, that was new, and that was $65,000, so that's certainly not something that others can do. And NDIS paid for the mods. That was a quick turnaround. I think it took them about 6 weeks to make a decision, and then it was very easy. So that was my year 3. Year 4. I began to put together the dream team for SIL Housing. So my current home is accessible to a point, but it's a small, like 1950s weatherboard. You can't exactly use your power wheelchair inside, and should it deteriorate any further, there's going to come a point where this is going to get to a crisis situation. So I'm planning ahead. Put together the dream team. So down here I've got Michelle Abbott from OT Solutions. She's my OT with the black jumper. And then that's my specialist support coordinator in the middle with the fabulous pink hair, Justine from Rural Life Assistance. And I split my funding between Justine and SDA Services Greg Barry, the godfather of SDA, who, the team is fantastic. They are absolutely fantastic, and got me the outcome that it wasn't perfect, but we got what I thought was going to be the outcome, was that at least I got funded for 1 resident. And yes, I will have to review it, but at least that was achieved. So altogether, it was a very successful outcome. So still, I will have to, finish that off, but year 4, in the bag. Year 5, start my own business. So, I had all of this support coordination funding every year, and I looked at my support coordinator and I said, what are we doing with this funding? It's being unused. How about we think of some creative ways to use it? And she said, well, what do you think? And I said, look, why don't you teach me how to be you? And in hindsight, I actually meant it, but in hindsight, I'm not quite sure she really thought that I would go through with it. But I did. So every Thursday, we would meet at 7 a.m. and we would do mentoring in how to get ready for an audit, policies, procedures, how to run a business, the whole kit and caboodle. And it worked. So I got my registration. And since then, I've used employment funding to do the parts of the business. So I do the inherent tasks in the business, and the support funding, the employment supports funding, pays for the tasks that I struggle with due to a direct result of my disability, and that's working really, really well. So, yeah. And again, I also tapped into the Small Business Assistance Program through iTech in Wollongong for another source of support as well. And it's been really hard. I don't want to sit here and say, oh, it's been so easy. This took a lot of work, and to get that funding, the employment funding, I had to go to the AAT. So when I went to the NDIS for my plan review meeting, I said I want to start my business, and they looked at me like, when you see the look in their eyes, like, Yep, I believe you. Anyway, they too had low expectations, and I couldn't get the funding. I went to review, ended up in the AAT, and it was such a traumatic process. But I didn't give up, and I got the funding, and so long, but I also live in fear that the next plan cycle, you can lose it. So you have no certainty, so you're trying to run a business with no certainty that in the next plan you may lose it all again, and then you've got to go through the AAT again. So they're giving one hand and they're kind of taking another. But I'll go through the people that have been very instrumental in this journey. So on the right, you will see me there, that's Fawn Barraclough from Connect My Community Consultancy. And then we have Matt. Wave your hand, Matt.
Hi, everybody.
And above Matt there, where I'm looking very cheerful, that is one of my participants, Paul, who's been with me for sport coordination way back since my MS days. And he, when I said to him, I said, I don't know if I can do this. He's like, no, you've got to do it. You can do it. And then there's Coda Dar, who always believed in me from the start. He's the CEO of United for Care. And then we have Roxy Horror. So I recently had my first stall down at the I Do Expo in Wollongong, and I thought to myself, I need someone really, really fabulous to be on my stall, just to bring some colour and life to this space. And Roxy is a very proud member of our LGBTQI community down in Wollongong, so she helped me out on the day. And then above we have Dykes on Bikes again. We were doing a photo shoot for the website. And then, of course, yes, another member of my NS community over there as well. So it's been a very, very hard journey to start the business, but I'm so glad that I did it because personally, yes, I get to wake up every day and I have purpose, and I know that I'm working with people and seeing that impact, slow incremental change, positive change in people's lives. But I also want to show people that it's possible to do this, it's possible to use your NDIS funding to do it. It's just a lot of hard work, and I wish it wasn't so hard. So, can the NDIS transform lives? I would say yes. 100% yes. I'm still a believer in it, even though I've become very cynical over these 10 years. But I think it's very much become almost a two-tiered system. So there's people like me, and again, like I said, I'm going to recognise that I've got a certain level of privilege and I've been able to navigate my way through this maze, but not everyone is so fortunate. So it becomes almost for me, I would say, a shameful thing, because in some ways it's like I feel like I'm leaving my community behind, because look at me, I'm doing all these wonderful things, but other people can't get funding for, the most basic of needs. They're still stuck back at block A. Do you understand what I'm saying? Not if you do, yes. Yeah. But if it does work well, and let's go back to that Living Limitless word that we're all hearing today at this event, can you imagine the generational impact? Like, you've seen how in 5 years it changed my life. Can you imagine in years to come what sort of impact, social impact, the NDIS will have? And that is why I fight so hard every day for the participants that I serve to ensure that they get the best outcomes, because it will change not just their lives, but those to come. So, thank you for listening, and I'll open up the floor now if you have any questions. Yes? Yes, Kelsey.
What has been your driver? Because you've achieved so much in 5 years. How do you do it? What has been the thing that gets you up in the morning and goes, just get on with it? The confidence piece. To back yourself.
That's That's a really good question. So, I don't feel like I have a choice, because I've been given this opportunity. Like, I've been given the NDIS, and all that comes with it is so much potential to make my own life better, and then hence others. So I think some days, and Matt will attest to this, in the last week I had a wobble moment, let's just say, where I thought to myself, is this all worth it? Because in so many ways it would be easier just to give up. Just to take the disability support pension and just have a less stressful life. So, but I don't know where I get the drive from. It's it's get up and go. It's just go. I don't know. I can't answer. I really don't. I'm not quite sure. But I'm excited for what's to come. Yeah. Yes, mate.
I just want to applaud you for actually doing the get up and go, because as a business owner as well with an NDIS plan, I also know how challenging it is to navigate the NDIS world and also be a business owner and support people at the same time. So,
yeah. Thank you. So Matt, do you just want to share with people how we've started working together?
I'm Matt from Smart Tech Resolutions. So Nina and I met through Justine, the lady with pink hair who you met earlier, saw earlier. I have been helping Nina with a multitude of things. We started designing a new website, then we worked on, well, how can technology actually assist you? You've already got your AT in place, but there's obviously technology, that was 4 years ago, there's more technology coming every day. How can we make it work for you? So we did that. We've done teaching, even trying reluctantly to Nina's much reluctancy, and trying to teach her a bit of Auslan, Australian Sign Language, but she is getting there, even though she'll shake her head and say no. So I just like to see my participants be able to use the NDIS in their best possible way and use technology in the best possible way and not get left behind. That's me.
Probably for both of you. I have a man on my team who also has a physical disability doing support coordination. What sort of things have you put in place to help you be successful in the role? In terms of assistive tech, anything like that?
That's a good question.
It's a big question.
It's a big question. As in managing.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, he hasn't got access to use his hands either, so it's a little bit different. But yeah, is there any computer technology systems that you're using that allow you to do your role better?
Otter. I use Otter, the app Otter, for transcribing notes, that kind of thing. Voice to text. I've just purchased a Remarkable tablet for note writing when I'm out and about. I have a smart pen where I can record conversations, obviously with consent. I can record conversations. So for memory purposes, yeah. Look, if I've got an issue, I just say, hey Matt, what's the solution?
Yeah.
It's like an unfolding process. Yeah.
I also think it's also case by case as well, as you say, like every disability is different, and even the ones that we may all have the same disability in this room, but how it manifests and how it affects us is so different as well. So I can't recommend, I just recommended to Nina she get, what did you call it, a big ass screen and literally extra wide screen to make it suitable for her, but not everyone would benefit from that. There's no point giving that to someone who's blind or something like that. You have to be adaptable, and I think that's where NDIS needs to learn to be more adaptable for each individual.
Can I add as well to some extra stuff that you can use? Did you say your participant can't use their hands?
So it's my employee?
Yeah. So we had a participant that has motor neuron disease, and his occupational therapist had, I don't know the brand of it, but there's a pretty cool tablet that is on a stand and you control with your eyes. Really cool.
Eye tracking technology.
Yes. So the participants are going to make phone calls to their loved ones or friends, keep them connected on social media or whatever, checking their emails even, just basic stuff that we can do. You calibrate it with your eyes. It's super cool. So it's a program, I just can't remember what it's called, sorry, but I might be able to reach out and find a bit more about that. They are a little bit pricey. I know the device that he was using with the stand was about $16,000 in total, but there was more updated programs and systems after that. But it was so helpful for him. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore, but that made his life so much easier because he was able to call his family back from overseas so they could have prayer sessions together. And they could have video calls with the family because he couldn't control anything with his hands other than his eyes. So yeah, there's a lot out there. So it's definitely good to reach out to an occupational therapist, and they might have some extra tools that you could use too.
Is your employee linked in with job access?
Yeah, we've done all the job access stuff, and we've got they've recommended. Just if there was anything that was